Om Tyageshwaram Ramakrishnam Saradam Matrarupinim Vivekanandam Acharyam Natva Vakshyami Shuddhaye Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacha Malam Sharirasya Cha Bhaishajena Yopa Karottam Pravaram Muninam Patanjalim Pranjaliranathosami. In our last class, we discussed Patanjali introducing one more concept. He doesn't introduce it as an upaya, as a means to attain samadhi, but as a means to categorize the sadhakas, the yogis. And that concept is concept of samvega. Call it yearning or sincerity. So he says that all the yogis who have these upayas, which he had listed in earlier sutra, upayas are Shraddha, Utsaha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, and Prajna. These are the 5 upayas that he had mentioned earlier. We have discussed those. Along with this, a yogi should have samvega, yearning, or sincerity. And this samvega could be of 3 degrees, so to say: mrudu samvega, madhya samvega, tivra samvega. So there are these 3 degrees of samvega, 3 degrees of sincerity. And then he says there are also degrees of upaya, the shraddha, etc. One may have them very feeble, major, mrudu upaya, or middling upaya, madhya upaya, or adhimatra upaya, that is abundance of these upayas. These upayas can be called as capital. That is the capital of the yogi, and samvega is the sincerity with which the yogi applies these upayas. So there are 3 degrees in the possession of upayas, and there are 3 degrees in the possession of sincerity and yearning. And based on these 3 and 3, he says there are 9 types of yogis. This is Vyasa Bhashya, Navayogina. There are 9 types of yogis. So those who have mrudu upaya, mrudu samvega, like that, permutation combination. But samadhi is asannatara. Samadhi and its result, the asamprajnata samadhi and its result, which is kaivalya, these are asannatama. These are extremely near the person who has abundance of upaya, adhimatra upaya, and tivra samvega, and intense sincerity and yearning. So a yogi who has abundance of upayas and tivra samvega, intense yearning and sincerity, for such a yogi, this samadhi is asannatama. Samadhi and its result are very near. So that's how he introduced the concept of samvega. We should also, this actually, we can add it as an upaya. So we should have Shraddha, Utsaha, Virya and all that. Along with that, we should also have samvega. We should also have sincerity and yearning. Yearning cannot be developed, sincerity can be developed. Especially though when we have mrudu upaya. So our capital may be very less. We may not have abundance of Shraddha and Virya and all that. But we can develop samvega. So we put to use whatever little capital we have to its fullness. That way, the abundance slowly, that way today it is very less feeble, it will become middling, and then it will become abundant. So this samvega is another you can add as an upaya itself, as a means to achieve samadhi. So we should have Shraddha, Virya, etc. We should also have samvega. Then he asks, the Bhashyakara asks a question. Now, is this the only way? That is, a person who has abundance of Shraddha, Virya and all that, and intense yearning, that is, adhimatra upaya, tivra samvega. They attain samadhi very fast. Samadhi and its results are very near to these people. They are the kind of top class of yogis. the highest class of yogis. They have abundance of capital and intense yearning to put that capital to use. Now, is there any other alternative to that? For those who don't have these, for those who don't have abundance of capital and intense yearning, is there any other alternative to reach the stage of samadhi early? That is, he poses a question as a prelude to the next sutra, which is Ishvara Pranidhanat Va. That was the next sutra. Va is an alternative, or. So this comes as an alternative to not having abundance of upaya and intense sincerity and yearning. For such people, there is another alternative, which is Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara is, we understand Ishvara as God. We won't call it God here, we will just call it Ishvara. We will see later today what is the concept of Ishvara in this Patanjali's yoga system. So it is through Pranidhana of Ishvara. So Pranidhana of Ishvara also, the samadhi and its result can be achieved very fast. That is the meaning. Through Pranidhana of Ishvara, the samadhi and its result can be achieved very fast. What is this Pranidhana and how does this work? How does this compensate for not having abundance of capital, of upayas and tivra samvega? That Bhashyakara explains that Pranidhana is a bhakti vishesha. It's a special kind of devotion, so to say. Now this word Pranidhana will come again in the second chapter, Sadhanapada. So, but the concept there would be slightly different. Here this Pranidhana is a special kind of meditation or special kind of devotion. What it does, it so to say makes this Ishvara favorable to the yogi. So a yogi, when he or she practices this Pranidhana, this Bhakti Vishesha towards Ishvara, the Ishvara becomes favorably disposed, and then avidhyana matrena, just by wishing on the part of the Ishvara that let this yogi be liberated. This wish on the part of Ishvara, that is the one that liberates the yogi. This is how this Pranidhana works. Pranidhana is a Bhakti Vishesha, special kind of devotion with which yogi approaches Ishvara, and Ishvara becomes favorably disposed on account of that Pranidhana and wishes, avidhyana, that let this yogi be liberated. The concept is same as we find in Vedanta and Bhakti, that is grace of Ishvara, grace of God, we call it grace of God. So here also the concept is same, it is the grace of Ishvara. This Ishvara has the capacity to liberate or hasten the spiritual progress of the yogis. So in this Pranidhana, what Pranidhana is also will be explained later. The important aspect of Pranidhana is seeking God's grace. That is the important aspect of Pranidhana, and that's what is a takeaway for us, so to say. So seeking God's grace. We talked of smriti, and we talked of remembering God throughout the day in some form or the other. To that, this Pranidhana is to be applied. We can apply to it. When we think of God, we should also seek His grace. We should seek the grace of God as we think of God. So this becomes actually another upaya. So there are those 5 upayas which were listed in one sutra. Then there is samvega, and then there is this seeking the grace of God. That becomes another upaya. So with these 7 upayas, a yogi should practice his or her spiritual life. So Pranidhana becomes another upaya, which will make Ishvara favorably disposed towards us and will, so to say, make him bestow its grace on us. This is what this Ishvara Pranidhanadva sutra described. The next sutra defines Ishvara. Now Ishvara has been mentioned in this sutra, Ishvara Pranidhanadva. The next 2-3 sutras talk about Ishvara. What is the concept of Ishvara in this yoga philosophy? One thing you see, yoga philosophy, it derives or relies heavily on and from Sankhya philosophy. Their sister philosophy, so to say, Sankhya Yoga. But Sankhyas don't have explicit concept of Ishvara. There is no concept of Ishvara in Sankhya. It is special to yogic philosophy. Only yogis accept Ishvara. Sankhya's do not. They may not deny it, but there is no, it is not stated, so to say. It is not their stated position. But yogis differ from Sankhya in this matter and believe in the existence of Ishvara. That is one deviation or difference from Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya's have Purushas and Prakriti or Pradhana, whatever you call it. Only 2 categories, so to say. But of course they are again subdivided. Prakriti is subdivided into many, but mainly 2. One is Prakriti and Purushas. So yogis add one more called Ishvara. There is one deviation from Sankhya. But Vedanta and Bhakti, they also have concept of Ishvara. That concept is different from this yogic concept of Ishvara. Vedantins, when you talk of Ishvara from the Vedantic point of view or Bhakti point of view, 4 or 5 qualities of Ishvara come to the mind. One is the Janmadhyasyataha, that is Janma Sthiti Bhangaha, the Srishti Sthiti Laya Kartrutva is in Ishvara. Ishvara is the one who creates, sustains and destroys this entire creation. And as such, it's Sarvagnya Sarvashakta. It is all-knowing and all-powerful. That is one quality, so to say, one characteristic of Ishvara. The other is metaphysical. Ishvara is related to the jivas and the nature, Prakriti. You either can call it, it is the self of all jivas and nature and all Prakriti, or it is the whole and these are the parts depending on whichever philosophy we believe in. But in some way or the other, Ishvara is related metaphysically to the jivas and the Prakriti or the nature. That is the second characteristic. It has a relation with these. Third, of course, is it is Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Svabhava. It is eternally free. Ishvara is eternally free. And Ishvara has the capacity to liberate jivas. Ishvara has the capacity. Ishvara has the capacity to grace, to bestow grace and liberate the jivas. There is another. And the fifth is, Ishvara is the Guru. Sri Ramakrishna again says, Satchidananda alone is the Guru. There is a shloka which says, Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. So one principle, manifesting as Ishvara, Guru and Atma. So these are few of the characteristics of Ishvara from the standpoint of Vedanta. We are studying this in this, we can study these in parallel with the yogic concept. Now yogic concept accepts some of these and doesn't accept others. Yogic concept accepts, as we saw, Ishvara Pranidhanadva. By praying to Ishvara, by seeking Ishvara's intervention, we can receive its grace. So the concept from Vedanta that Ishvara has the capacity to liberate human beings, that is accepted by the yogis. It is Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Svabhava, that is also accepted by the yogis. It is the Guru, it is also accepted by the yogis. But the yogis do not accept that Ishvara is the creator, sustainer and destroyer. It is the Srishti Sthiti Laya Karta that aspect of Ishvara, yogis do not accept. There they deviate. They have their own way of projecting or stating how the creation happens. They don't believe that Ishvara is involved in this. And nor do they believe that Ishvara is related to the jivas and Prakriti, as Vedanta believes. As either Ishvara is the self of these all, or Ishvara is the whole and these are parts, whatever, in some way related to the creation. But that yogis do not accept that Ishvara is in that way related to the creation, so to say. Ishvara has this metaphysical relation with other jivas and Prakriti that they do not accept. So these are the points of difference, so to say, between the Sankhya and or Yoga and Vedanta. And between Sankhya and Yoga, the only concept is Sankhya's do not advocate an Ishvara, but the yogis accept and advocate Ishvara. So this is some kind of background. Now, coming to the sutra which defines this Ishvara, it is Klesha Karma Vipaka Ashayaihi Aparamrishtaha Purusha Visheshaha Ishvaraha. This is how Ishvara is defined by Patanjali. Klesha Karma Vipaka Ashayaihi Aparamrishtaha Purusha Visheshaha Ishvaraha. So Ishvara is a Purusha Vishesha. Now Purusha is a term used by the Sankhyas and Yogis. It has nothing to do with gender. What Vedanta calls jivas, these yogis called as Purusha, so to say. Individual entity. Purusha is an individual entity. But Ishvara is a special kind of individual entity, Purusha Visheshaha. So it is completely different, so to say, from all other Purushas. It is Purusha Visheshaha. And a special kind of Purusha, which is aparamrishta, that is untainted, unattached, unrelated by Klesha Karma Vipaka Ashaya. But Klesha Karma Vipaka Ashayaihi, by all these, aparamrishtaha, untainted, Purusha Visheshaha, a special kind of Purusha, is Ishvara. That is their definition. Now what this Klesha Karma mean, we will see. But this is their definition of Ishvara. It is a special kind of individual entity, so to say, a special kind of Purusha, which is untainted by all these. Now, what are all these? These are all technical terms. Klesha, again, these will be explained in detail in this next pada, in the next chapter. Sadhana pada. Avidya asmita, ragadvesha, abhinaveshaha, klesha. Ignorance, sense of ego, desires, hatred, and clinging to life. These are the kleshas, so to say. We can say ignorance, sense of egoism, and then various drives that we are very familiar with. All these together, they form kleshas. Ignorance about real nature, sense of ego, and the drives. All these together, they are kleshas. So that is one part. These lead to karma. Karma we know. Karma is action. That is either shubha or ashubha, either good or bad action, dharma, adharma. That is karma. So there are drives, then there is action. Then there is vipaka. Vipaka is fruition. Fruition of those karmas. In terms of, according to yoga, it is jati ayur bhoga. What kind of species a Purusha will be born, what will be the span of life, what kind of experiences it will have. All these are defined by the karmas. So there is fruition of that karma, karma phala you can say. And then there is ashaya, that is vasanas. Those experiences, whatever we get, those will, so to say, die down into the antahkarana as vasanas, as subliminal impressions. So this is actually the whole samsara is in this phrase. There is, starting from ignorance, there are various drives which prompt us to do good or bad actions. Those good or bad actions reach a fruition. As a fruition, we have experiences. Those experiences again generate vasanas. the samskaras, so to say. So the whole of samsara, whole of bondage, so to say, is summed up in these 4 words: klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya. And untainted by all these, one who is not attached, one who is not bound by any of these and all of these, such a kind of special Purusha is Ishvara. That is their definition of Ishvara. So Ishvara is the one who has no concern with bandha. That is, no taint with bandha. Such a kind of special Purusha is Ishvara, the Vedantic concept of Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava, that is mentioned here. Eternally free, eternally pure, that is Ishvara. So, that's why, as we saw earlier, some of the concepts yoga accepts. This is one of the concepts. Couple of things come up. One is, there are those Purushas which have attained liberation. They have attained Kaivalya, Kaivalyana. They also have no taint with any of these. They are also free from ignorance and drives and action and their results and samskar. They are free. So what is the difference between a Jivan Mukta, a Kaivalya Prapta, a Kaivalyan, so to say, person who has attained to Kaivalya, attained to freedom, and Ishvara? Why call Purusha Vishesha Ishvara? What is that Vishesha? That Bhashyakara says that those who have attained to Kaivalya, those who are free from bondage, who have no taint at all with bondage now, but ordinary Purushas, they were bound earlier. That is the difference. So if a sadhaka, today he or she is bound, tomorrow he or she becomes liberated, attains to Kaivalya, and then has no connection with klesha, karma, vipaka, ashaya. But that doesn't make that Purusha Vishesha, because it had an earlier relation with bondage. It was bound earlier, whereas Ishvara is never bound, is Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta. There never was any bondage for Ishvara. Whereas for Jivan Muktas or those who have attained to Kaivalya, they had association with bondage earlier. And that is why he is called Purusha Vishesha, because he is never tainted by this bandha. That is one difference. Second point with Bhashyakara raises is, what is the pramana for this Ishvara? This is a very talked about topic. In Vedanta also you have, what is the pramana? What is the proof, or how we know that Ishvara exists? That there is such a Purusha Vishesha called Ishvara. And the satisfactory or whatever answer we call, Brahma Sutra also gives Shastra Yonitvat. So Shastra is the pramana. Scriptures are the pramana for the existence of this Ishvara. We know it only from the scriptures, which are the experiences of the realized souls. That is an easier way of understanding the pramanya of the Ishvara. There could be arguments about that, but the easiest way to accept, because we are talking of Shraddha, so we have Shraddha in the scriptures, we have Shraddha in the words of the sages who were pure-hearted. That is the pramana for us to accept that there is this Purusha Vishesha called Ishvara who is never tainted. And the second point he makes is that his Aishwarya, his glory is unsurpassed. Unsurpassed glory, there is none equal to Ishvara or none higher than Ishvara. So he is the supreme Purusha. And that's how it becomes Purusha Vishesha, because everyone has some glory or the other. Every one of us has some glory or the other. And there is this distinction between the glory of one human being and the other. Right? If you look at Purusha, then from worm up to a Jivan Mukta, there is this gradation of the manifestation of power. But in Purusha Vishesha, in Ishvara, it is supreme. There is none equal or above it. Tat samostya bhidikah kutolya. There is none equal to it, not to speak of greater than Ishvara. So these are the few concepts about Ishvara that are discussed. This Ishvara concept will continue for another couple of sutras. We'll see later. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.